Okay, so you want to own a golf course, rolling green fairways, a clubhouse with a bar that never closes, members who pay you every single month whether they play 18 holes or never show up at all. It sounds like one of the most relaxed businesses a person could own. Wake up, watch the sprinklers run, collect membership checks. By the end of this video, you're going to understand why the golf course industry has been shrinking for almost 2 decades, why the land underneath your course is often worth more than the business itself, and why one very specific tax strategy involving golf courses got so aggressive that it landed on a federal watch list. This isn't really a story about golf. It's a story about what happens when an entire industry gets built for a boom that never fully arrived. Building an 18-hole golf course from raw land is genuinely one of the most expensive things you can do with dirt. You need somewhere around 120 to 150 acres depending on the layout, and that's before you've touched a single blade of grass. Shaping the land itself, moving earth to create the hills, bunkers, and greens, routinely runs into the tens of millions of dollars on its own for a full regulation course. Then there's the irrigation system, which isn't just sprinklers on a timer. A modern course needs a network of underground piping and pump stations capable of moving hundreds of thousands of gallons of water a day across the entire property. And that infrastructure alone can cost several $1,000,000 before you've planted a single fairway. Add the clubhouse, the cart fleet, a maintenance facility big enough to store mowers the size of small cars, and the permitting and environmental studies almost every jurisdiction now requires before you're allowed to reshape that much land. And a new 18-hole course can easily cost $20 to $40 million from empty field to opening day. That's before you've sold a single membership. This is exactly why almost nobody builds new golf courses anymore. And that sentence alone should tell you something important about this entire industry that we need to unpack. For most of the 20th century, golf course construction in the United States tracked pretty closely with population growth and general prosperity. Then, in the 1990s, something changed. A single golfer named Tiger Woods turned professional in 1996, and the sport experienced a genuine cultural surge. Television ratings climbed, junior golf programs expanded, and developers, real estate investors, and municipalities all made a very reasonable-sounding bet. Golf was about to become a permanently bigger business, so build more courses to capture that growth. Course construction in the US hit numbers in the late 1990s and early 2000s that the industry had never seen before. Hundreds of new courses opening every single year, often as the centerpiece of new residential developments, because a golf course view could add real premium value to every house built around it. The problem is that golf participation didn't keep growing at the rate everyone had priced in. It plateaued, then started drifting downward through the 2000s as the golfing population aged and fewer younger players took up the sport at the same rate their parents had. By around 2006, the industry hit a turning point that's been true almost every single year since. More golf courses close in the United States annually than open. Not a one-time correction, a sustained, nearly 2-decade pattern of net course closures driven by an industry that had built its supply for a boom that only partially showed up. Here's the part that should genuinely surprise you. This didn't just hurt bad golf courses and bad locations. It restructured what a golf course is actually worth as an asset in a way that has almost nothing to do with how good the golf is. This is the single most important thing to understand before buying a golf course, and it's the exact opposite of how most people think about the purchase. You're not really buying a golf business, you're buying a very large, very specific piece of land that happens to have a golf business operating on it right now, and in a lot of cases, especially near growing suburban areas. That raw land is worth significantly more if it's rezoned for housing than it will ever generate as a golf course. This creates a strange incentive running through the entire industry. A course that's losing money every year isn't necessarily a failed business from the owner's perspective. It can be a slow, patient real estate play, where the owner keeps the doors open just long enough to eventually sell the land to a developer at residential prices instead of golf course prices. Some struggling courses have sat half-maintained for years, technically still operating, while the real transaction everyone's actually waiting for is the rezoning approval that turns 150 acres of fairways into 400 new homes. If you're buying a golf course purely to run it as a golf business, you need to understand you're competing with your own land's alternate future the entire time you own it. Layer 1 is green fees, what a non-member pays to play a single round. This is the most visible income stream, and similar to fuel at a gas station, it's often thinner than people assume once you account for cart rental splits, course maintenance allocated per round, and the deep discounting most courses run during off-peak hours just to get any golfer on an empty course rather than none at all. Layer 2 is membership dues, and this is where the real predictable cash flow lives. A member typically pays an initiation fee up front, which can range from a few $1,000s at a modest local course to well into six figures at an exclusive private club, and then ongoing monthly dues on top of that, whether they play 4 rounds a month or 0. This is the closest thing golf has to the mall's anchor tenant stability. Predictable, recurring, largely uncorrelated with weather or daily foot traffic. Layer 3 is food and beverage, and at a lot of clubs this quietly rivals or beats golf-related income entirely. The clubhouse restaurant, the bar, wedding and event bookings in the banquet hall, a golf course with a beautiful view, and a well-run kitchen becomes a wedding venue business wearing a golf course's clothing. Some private clubs generate more from banquet and event revenue in a single strong wedding season than they do from the entire golf operation. Layer 4 is the pro shop and lesson revenue. Equipment sales, apparel, private instruction from the resident golf pro, which, similar to a mall's kiosk economics, occupies almost no physical space relative to the 150 acres outside, but can carry surprisingly strong margins per square foot. And Layer 5, quietly one of the biggest, is real estate. Many golf courses were built specifically as the amenity anchor for a surrounding residential development, meaning a huge amount of the course's real financial value was already extracted the moment the surrounding houses sold at a golf view premium. The course itself at that point sometimes exists primarily to protect the resale value of the homes around it, rather than to be a standalone profit center, which raises an uncomfortable question for anyone buying that course years later expecting it to perform as its own business. So on paper, that's 5 income layers stacked together, some of it genuinely strong. Now here's the other side. Water is the expense that catches new owners completely off guard, especially if you're buying in a warmer or drought-prone region. Keeping 150 acres of fairways and greens alive can require hundreds of thousands of gallons of water a day during peak season. And in regions facing drought restrictions, courses have been forced into brutal choices. Pay dramatically higher rates for water, let fairways go brown and lose golfers to a better-maintained competitor down the road, or in the most extreme cases, shut down entirely during restriction periods. Course maintenance itself is a specialized, year-round operation. Greens require a level of precision mowing and chemical treatment that's closer to agricultural science than lawn care, and a bad frost, a fungus outbreak, or an improperly maintained green can take months to recover, during which every golfer who plays that hole notices, and some of them don't come back. And here's the fixed cost trap that should feel familiar by now. Your biggest costs barely move whether you have 40 golfers on the course today or 400. The irrigation system runs the same either way. The greens crew shows up either way. A golf course's cost structure is almost entirely tied to maintaining the land itself, while its revenue is tied to how many people actually choose to play, which means an empty Tuesday afternoon costs you almost exactly what a packed one does, minus the cart fees. Now here's the part of this industry that genuinely surprised me when I looked into it, because it's not a physical risk like a leaking tank, it's a legal one, and it's specific to golf courses in a way that's almost strange when you first hear it. For years, a tax strategy called a syndicated conservation easement became popular among certain investors, and golf courses were disproportionately used as the vehicle for it. Here's roughly how it worked. Investors would buy land, often golf course land, get it appraised at an aggressively high value based on its highest potential use, then donate a conservation easement restricting future development on that land, and claim a massive charitable tax deduction based on that inflated appraisal, sometimes worth many times what the investors actually paid for the land itself. The IRS eventually flagged this pattern as one of its top compliance priorities for several years running, specifically calling out abusive conservation easement transactions and pursuing enforcement action against the promoters and, in many cases, the investors who claimed the deductions. Multiple cases tied to golf course properties ended up in tax court, with the IRS successfully challenging the inflated appraisals in a number of them. If you're simply buying a golf course to run as a golf course, this doesn't directly touch you. But it tells you something important about this industry. Enough golf course land sat around with genuinely ambiguous contested value, somewhere between working golf business and undeveloped land waiting for its next use. That an entire aggressive tax industry formed around exploiting that ambiguity. That's not a footnote. That's a signal about how uncertain the real value of golf course land has become industry-wide. Does owning a golf course actually work as a business? In the good scenario, you're running a well-located course, ideally private or semi-private, with strong membership retention, a genuinely profitable food and beverage and events operation, and a water supply that isn't under serious, long-term drought pressure. In that world, membership dues give you the predictable base income a mall owner gets from an anchor lease. Banquet and wedding revenue quietly carries more of the business than the golf itself. And the surrounding real estate, if you have any development rights left, gives you a long-term asset appreciation story on top of the operating business. In the bad scenario, you're running an aging course in a region with declining golf participation, water costs climbing faster than green fees can absorb, membership numbers slowly bleeding as the golfing population ages out faster than new golfers replace them, and a maintenance backlog that keeps growing because the cash flow never quite supports catching up on it. In that scenario, the most valuable thing you own probably isn't the golf business at all. It's the rezoning potential of the land itself, and at some point, the most rational business decision available to you stops being run the golf course better and starts being sell the dirt. That's the part of this industry that doesn't get said out loud very often. For close to 20 years now, running a golf course well hasn't always been the most profitable thing you could do with that land. Sometimes the golf course was never really the business. It was just the thing sitting on top of the business, keeping the land warm until somebody offered the right number for what's underneath it.